So I'm going to begin by taking you through a series of tools that we at Syracuse University help faculty set up to do this. And the first tool that I'm going to talk about is Google Scholar. This is my #1 recommendation when faculty come and say, what can I do to sort of better show my work or to better, to get better Google results, essentially. It's a free tool that's part of the Google Scholar suite, and researchers can claim all of the publications they have within Google Scholar, display them along with metrics that you see here, and then the result, this page will come up when an author search for in Google Scholar. It also can, once it's been set up, it can automatically update, or it can be mediated for faculty to review things before it gets added to them as well. And like I said, it's my #1 recommendation. If faculty are not willing to do anything else beyond this, I usually recommend that they do this. The second recommendation I typically have is for them to review their Scopus profile. And as we move through the presentation, you'll hear a little bit more about why at Syracuse in particular it's important to have a correct Scopus profile because of our pure implementation. But it is something that we have at Syracuse. It's well used at Syracuse. And so this is usually my second recommendation, is to go in and make sure that your publications are reflected correctly within Scopus. If something's wrong, we can get it fixed. If something's missing but is indexed by Scopus, we can get it added. And so by taking just a little bit of time to update this, it can also help with what people find about them and about their research when they search. For faculty who want to go a little bit further and also start displaying some of their altmetric information, the top thing I recommend to them is to set up their impact story profile. It's very, very easy to do if they have an ORCID ID, and usually that's something that comes up in conversation when we're talking about these things. This is an altmetric aggregator that aggregates altmetric information about an individual and all of their work, and so times things are viewed, times things are discussed, shared, saved, all of those things that go into making up altmetric data can be displayed here. And it also allows you to highlight things that might be a priority at your institution. So this screen doesn't show it, but if you were to look at one of the other tabs on somebody's impact story profile, it'll show you the percentage of publications that are available open access. So if that's something that's a priority at an institution, it's an easy way to highlight that, as well as the international reach of publications. And so it's a way for faculty to show their impact abroad as well. Then there's a few other tools that faculty usually have questions about. This is one that just about everybody who comes to talk to me about these kinds of things knows about. They haven't always used it. But ResearchGate is one of the academic social networking tools that people use to promote the scholarship that they have. ResearchGate it was founded in 2008, and it reports 6 million users, with a third of those visiting monthly. It's growing pretty quickly. In 2014, it only had 4.5 million users. And it tends to have a lot more users in STEM. So being a science and engineering librarian, this is something people I work with either use or know about people using. The users have to provide most of the data, in this case themselves. It's not scraping things like Google Scholar or having things collated like Scopus would, but you can connect to LinkedIn or Facebook and share contacts and things like that. And adding publications to this isn't that straightforward. The search functionality only searches within the ResearchGate if community have already uploaded documents. And so when I went in to set up my profile, I needed to upload or add most of my content manually. And to see papers in this, you must join ResearchGate to research and download the papers. And as with the next tool I'm going to show, this tool has some issues with copyright permissions when working with it. So academia.edu, another similar tool to ResearchGate, a platform for academics to share research papers is how it's promoted. And it has 21 million academics who've signed up to use it, who add more than 5 million papers. And they have 1.5 million research interests. And so it's a much larger user community than ResearchGate, and it's more broad than ResearchGate, which tends to have a lot of STEM use in it. And then so according to a study by academia.edu, they've made a claim that work here gets cited more frequently. There were some problems with the methods they used for that, but it is pretty conclusive that having your work out there somewhere does help citation rates. So this is usually a question that I get when talking about why you would want to have your stuff out there. And then also, lots of our institutional repositories have functionality to have these public profiles. At Syracuse University, we use bpress, and we can use the selected works page to have this nice profile of all of your work with easy links to the institutional repository or elsewhere if you don't have your content there. So that's another option we talk about when talking about what you can do to profile your work. And then there's even more tools available. So if a faculty member really wants to control what's out there about them, they can also be sure to use these tools and other things to really curate their profiles. So why are librarians involved in this? What do we bring to these conversations? Isn't it just people, controlling what they have on the web about themselves? And I'd say we have a few things to lend in these conversations. The first being author disambiguation. This is an example at Syracuse of a family. There's 2 faculty members who are at Syracuse. They sometimes publish together, they sometimes publish separately, and this is their extended family with an aunt as well as children who all have active publishing records. So all of these people are seen as pretty much these names in databases, and their publications get mixed up between them. So librarians are really great at helping faculty to disambiguate their work from others. We help faculty members using ORCID and other identifiers to make sure people know what's theirs is theirs and what's not theirs is not theirs. Talking about these kinds of tools is also a great time to talk about copyright with faculty. To make sure they take care to understand what they can and cannot post and the different versionings of things that they've worked on. It's a great conversation starter for copyright conversations. And we understand the information market that's out there. So lots of these tools are being produced by people that libraries already work with. We understand how they're connected, how their systems are connected, and I would argue that we should be in the room when vendors are there pitching these products to our institutions. We already buy lots of products from these companies, and so we should be there when we're talking about buying even more of them. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Scott.
Thank you very much, Annie. So I'm going to broaden the conversation a bit to talk about the institution. What we've heard so far all benefits the individual. It makes the individual's work more prominent, more discoverable, cleans them up, but it doesn't aggregate that at the institutional level. And that's a challenge that we have. So at any university, I'm sure the same is true of yours, some of the data is sitting inside the libraries, some of it's sitting in your Office of Research, some of it's sitting in HR, some of it's sitting Office of Sponsored Programs, whatever name goes on. Some of it is out there in the world that we're subscribing to. You may have smaller systems. We lost a lot of our own grant-seeking personnel in a buyout program at Syracuse last year. So we learned our own reliance on just 1 or 2 people, and it's not a good method for sustainability. We really, really wanted to enhance our identity as an institution and aggregate the kind of things that are going on at the individual level, and then brand it with Syracuse and say, can we move across researchers at Syracuse at will, not having to drill down in the file folder kind of structure where you have colleges, then departments underneath it, and then individuals under that our regular website does. So we wanted to put it all together, and in a sense, what is going on with these kind of systems that I'm going to talk about is not too distinct from what we've done for a heck of a long time with knowledge organization. We're very, very good at doing this with books, with finished scholarly products, journals, videos, what have you. What we're really trying to do now is organize or catalog information about the researchers on a campus. Aggregate that. They're our most important investment at any university, not the stuff the library buys, the faculty at your campus. So why can't we organize that information in a much better, much more robust way than we have heretofore? After all, this is the kind of stuff that my university is looking for and trying to track better and trying to understand what's going on, and I suspect yours is too. We have some of this in the library, obviously publications, but we don't really have grant money. We don't have that kind of data, so we'd have to marry it up from another part of campus. We don't necessarily have awards and honors. Again, it's a different part of campus. No one portion so far has managed to aggregate that, and that's what we're starting to see some of the tools doing. So if you think of these things as akin to what we've done, again, with cataloging. Well, we don't just catalog books or organize books in our ILS, we also do journals, videos, et cetera. You name the format, well, or genre. The same thing is true here. There are a couple of tools and companies in this space already. And as Annie said, these companies, the companies behind these products are companies that, by and large, we've already done business with, though some of them are a little bit new. And some of them are outside the content space as well. Vivo was originated in Cornell, and it's more open source. Converis comes from Thomson Reuters. Symplectic is ultimately part of the digital science Macmillan world. And then Pure, which we ended up working with, is ultimately part of Elsevier, but it was a European company originally. Making choices around these things is a huge, of huge importance. Think of it this way, it's not so dissimilar from when you decide to go down the repository path. Do you outsource it, or do you build it yourself? Do you do something that's going to require a lot more developer bandwidth, time, expertise, or are you going to, how customizable do you want it? Do you want to be part of a user community, or do you want something that's very much a one-off kind of system that's tailored just to you? Those are the kind of choices that come with this. Broadly speaking, these things are all described as RIMS, R-I-M-S. That's terminology that originated, I don't know if it originated with him, but Lorcan Dempsey of OCLC wrote a very good summary blog post on his blog a year or so ago about research information management systems. That's this product space. And there may be others in this space. These are the ones that we know of and really think fit in well with what we're talking about today. So you do have some choice in this. So here's what our Pure system at Syracuse looks like. It's branded Experts at Syracuse, experts.syr.edu. And here's an individual researcher. So in some sense, this doesn't look too different than what Annie showed you before. However, it's tying together grant activity and research output, and then it's starting to, and you can leap from this person into other profiles at the university, individuals who do similar research, no matter what their department is. And we're starting to see some surprises and say, oh, there are people doing similar work elsewhere that we didn't even know about, or certainly the people didn't know about it. We can do the same thing with grants. We can look and see who's gotten grants that touch on education in a very broad sense. And it's not just people in the School of Education. It could be, we've seen that there are people doing work in 4 or 5 of our 11 colleges. Here's another benefit. This is the collaboration. These are the individuals that our university, the places globally that they're working with. And this is a good advertisement. This is a way for not just researchers. Again, the individual tools are of primary interest to researchers, but these are more of interest to our trustees want to see this kind of stuff, potential graduate students, potential undergraduate students, potential faculty who are looking and say, if I come here, who are they already working with? Are there any surprises in these kind of networks? It's a competitive intelligence tool in some way, shape, or form for us and for many parts of our community. And again, it's about the institution as opposed to the individual. And here's another bit, but there are benefits to the individual. So this is taken from one of our faculty pages within the College of Engineering. And a lot of these static web pages that make up our profile pages, they're always out of date. Is this a top priority at your institution to update faculty pages? She has published quite a lot more stuff, and she has published stuff that is subsequent to 2012. Yet if you go in there and look at that, it looks like, she's not doing much. The nice thing about these systems is that they harvest data from other sources. So in our case, with Pure, we're harvesting data from Scopus, and then we could harvest from other sources as well. But we have a built-in updating system that gets a heck of a lot of the stuff. Doesn't get everything, but it gets a heck of a lot of the stuff that's published by Syracuse and updates on a much more frequent basis than once every 5 years, which is more or less what's happening with the individual pages constructed by departments or colleges. So who needs to be involved to make these things work? Well, it's more than libraries. This is really involving the library in a broader conversation at the campus level. We worked with our Office of Research, and in fact, this project that we did grew out of conversations that I had with our Office of Research, our VP for Research, over a span of a number of years, where they really wanted to get information. They didn't have information on who was collaborating with whom at the university, and it was very, very challenging to get a high-level picture of what's going on. And then when our new chancellor came in, they started asking questions too. This was a couple of years ago, saying, we can't even see who's doing what. We can't see who's publishing what. That's on one side, and the grant data is on another side, and the web pages that are on display for the public. There's no central indexing going on here. They didn't use the word indexing, of course, but that's really what's happening. So to make this work, you got your Office of Research, you need your central IT, you need the libraries, you may need your HR, because you're going to be populating, you're going to be defining who actually gets included in these systems. Who is faculty? Easy to say faculty, but harder to define. If you're going to do everybody, okay, well, again, where do you draw the line? What's your system for cleaning up as people leave and come in? You have new people every year, and you have people who transition out. Where are you getting the feeds on that from? So you're going to have a lot of departments involved in this. And this helps position the library at an institutional level, not just as a consumer of finished research products, i.e. books, journals, what have you, but in driving research collaboration in the grant-seeking enterprise itself. And I say that it takes a lot of partners because it really is an institutional investment. To make these things work, it's all hands on deck. These are not necessarily turnkey systems. It really is, even an outsourced system like we did, it takes effort, folks. So you're not going to make this kind of decision blithely, and I urge you to have some of those conversations and have those partnerships and have a clear understanding of who's investing and how they're investing, what roles they're playing, who's taking the lead. The libraries may or may not be taking the lead on this kind of project. You need to be also cognizant of the need of being neutral in this. That's one of the strengths the libraries bring to this that make it work. After all, there are some limitations. So people are going to see this and say, well, you're comparing oranges and apples. You're comparing data from humanities to STEM. You're trying to group this. Does it really belong together? There's concern about are metrics being used to judge? And we say, you know what, this data is already there. What we're doing is making it more effective for the institution. We are answering questions from a patron base at our institution. This patron base just happens to be much more of our administration than our undergraduates or graduate students or individual researchers. So there are limitations. These systems aren't perfect, but they get better at driving grant-seeking data. The more data one puts in, the more of one's history, the way Annie talked about in the individual tools, that we can populate these things and they're smarter systems. So why libraries? It's exactly the same things that Annie said before. We have already worked with the companies that are doing a lot of this. We understand the key importance of the metadata, and we understand that the metadata is going to vary because it's coming from the libraries, from publishers, from different publishers, from the Office of Sponsored Research, et cetera. We need to have some normative conversations to say, how do we marry this stuff up? How do we do it? How do we track it? So we're pretty good at this, and we're a neutral and trusted partner on campus. We don't have the interests of any one school or college above the others. We have the interests of the institution. That's a really, really important thing. We can facilitate that conversation. So now I'm going to turn it over to Jen to talk a little bit more specifically about how we worked with Elsevier.
So I will be speaking about the value of and how a subscription-based vendor such as Elsevier is vital to helping both individual researchers as well as institutions increase their research reputation. So in one of the first slides, Annie talked about what is research reputation. So it's comprised of grants, projects, awards, honors, scholarly output. And so research reputation is really about making that research visible. And sometimes the challenge that an institution has is easy access to data both internally, but then also making data visible outside of the institution. So this is where a subscription-based vendor can come into play, where they can assist with collecting and storing data on behalf of the institution, providing a means for adding and tracking additional information that an institution has and incorporating that all into one system. It does an opportunity to increase awareness both with individual researchers, with peers, within the community, and to sponsors, and then it also makes data appealing and easy to understand. So a couple of the tools that have been mentioned throughout the presentation and that I will be briefly referencing would be Scopus, which is the abstract and citation database, PURE, which is a CRIS system, or a current research information management system. And so that allows an organization to collect and organize all of their research information from both internal as well as external sources. And then SciVal, which is a tool that allows you to look at research performance metrics from over 7,500 different research institutions and 250 different countries worldwide. So some of the benefits to working with a subscription-based vendor tool and really making that data accessible is little to no faculty input required. So an example that Scott had showed was, a faculty website that was out of date, and so, allows for updating on a regular basis. So data ingestion or synchronization from internal systems. So the ability to collect all of, different pieces of data into one system. Data extraction and automatically feeding data into internal systems. So being able to feed publications to faculty websites so that those are current, feeding them to internal CV systems or to faculty activity reporting systems. And then also allows for the ability of downloading data to warehouses for additional analyses. And so an example that I have actually came out of my time when working at the University of Michigan. And so they pulled some data out of their expert system, which is now PURE. And what they wanted to look at was the impact of where faculty had assigned space and the implication that their location had on their grants, their publications, and their concepts. And so one of the things that they found was being close to an elevator actually increased your chance of participating in team science. So these tools also provide a non-financial view of faculty a number of times, and then also assist with collaboration. So this is taking a look at an example from earlier this year in working with SUNY Stony Brook. So this is looking at SciVal and looking at their collaboration module. So in looking at SUNY Stony Brook's research reputation, they realized that they really wanted to increase their number of corporate collaborations. And so they looked at what their current corporate collaborations are, and they sorted those by their field-weighted citation impact. So this is a normalized metric which takes into account the discipline, the time since publication, as well as the article type. And so they can see kind of what their best collaborations are with corporate partners, and then really drill into those collaborations to understand who specifically at the institution is collaborating with people at these corporate entities, and then what are they collaborating about, and are these things that we want to continue collaborating on. So one of the nice things when working with a subscription-based vendor is they provide access to data that institutions probably wouldn't otherwise have. So Stony Brook Institution is able to look at their collaborations, but also have the ability through SciVal to look at the collaborations of their peer institutions. So they can look at a peer institution and see who are they collaborating with, and compare that against who SUNY Stony Brook is collaborating with, and determine if there are certain collaborations that maybe they do want to develop. So another view of SciVal is looking at the trends module, and this is looking at it from a little bit of a different perspective, but SUNY Stony Brook had realized through research reputation that they wanted to focus on cancer research. So within the trends module, they're able to look at cancer research and determine who the top authors are, the top institutions within cancer research, and then look into what specific work are they doing, and then decide whether they want to continue expanding existing relationships or are there new partners that they do want to make to increase their research reputation in these areas. So subscription-based vendor tools also help to provide national recognition. So again, looking at an example coming out of Michigan, the Michigan Strategic Fund and the Michigan Academic Development Corp invested $6.8 million in university business partnerships. And so of that $6.8 million, they used $1.8 million to invest in building a corporate relations network for Michigan's research universities. So this is known as MCERN, or the Michigan Corporate Relation Network, and it includes the University of Michigan, Michigan State University, Wayne State, and Western Michigan University. And so what this tool really does is the state of Michigan said that they wanted to increase the number of corporate and institution collaborations. And so really trying to drive businesses to this community tool that combines all of these institutions. So a business could search on a concept such as robotics and find who are the top experts in the state of Michigan without having to reach out to each of those individual institutions separately. So user groups, this is another benefit of working with a subscription-based vendors, is they assist you with connecting with your peers. And so a lot of times when you're coming into a subscription-based vendor, there's somebody who's come before you. And so the ability to share ideas of how they're using those products. And then also teams that are looking to the customers to provide feedback on the roadmap of those products. So just a couple of examples is the Peer North American User Group meeting. So the second annual one is next week. And so this just provides an ability for US customers to connect and share ideas of how they're using Pure, tips and tricks, what's worked well. There's also a Pure International Conference. And so this provides a great ability for US customers to visit who have been working with Pure for 5 or 6 months to then interact with customers who have been using Pure for 5 to 6 years. And so learning how they're using Pure and how they're using it differently internationally. So products are continuously evolving to meet market needs. And so another benefit of working with subscription-based vendors is you have a team dedicated to developing those products. They're reaching out to customers to understand what they want to see, and they're working on building additional functionality into those tools rather than having to rely on internal resources for that development work. They're also providing release notes, webinars around new functionality, and documentation, so all things that don't have to be recreated. Training and engagement. So this is actually where my role comes into play as a customer consultant for a vendor, is customers experience vendors not only through their products, but through all touch points of the whole journey. So it's really about building a relationship. It's not about just making the sale, doing some training, and then signing off. It's about building an engagement plan and understanding how the institution wants to use that tool. Who do they want to roll it out to? In what order? Having regular touch points to understand, are they on track? And then also, making sure the customer is updated on what new releases are available and making that functionality known. So resources, this is something that Scott briefly touched on, but subscription-based vendors provide the tools so institutions don't need to develop them. But it's important to remember that there are still institutional resources that are needed. So someone who can assist with institutional questions or training on a day-to-day basis. Somebody who has technical expertise so that you're making the most of the data that you have in those systems. Either whether it's putting additional data into the system to track it all in one system or pulling it out to analyze it further. And then also marketing and communications. And so this leads into the next slide of ongoing marketing and communication efforts are extremely important when working with these tools and wanting to focus on research reputation. And so the reason for this is a lot of these tools are not things that people are probably going to use every single day. And so just reminding them that they are available to them. So a couple of pictures here. One is promoting Pure, or at the time was known as Experts, at the New Medical Student Activities Fair. So students are looking for mentors, and so Pure is a great way to search on concepts and find mentors who have a high research reputation in a particular area. New faculty orientation, so they're looking for collaborators, so directing them to these tools to find out who at this university, what are they working in, is this somebody I can partner with? Another example from the University of Michigan was they did a survey on some of their website content and found that people were very satisfied with a hot topics menu. So this was a menu that just listed some of the tools and resources available to faculty and staff. So knowing exactly where to go and how to link out to those resources. Having an FAQ or a training page so that you can understand, who's included in these tools. Who do I contact at the university if I have questions or I want to be included? And then also, demoing the functionality. So it's continuously changing, and so making sure to remind people that this tool is available to them and then showing them the new features that are available. And then the last thing that I wanted to speak on is I've spoken some about tools that subscription-based vendors provide, but they can also provide customized reporting. So THE and QS are leading university ranking organizations, and their rankings are known globally. So research performance data accounts for a significant portion of these rankings. And so by working with a vendor, you can have them look at your institution's kind of comparative performance. So looking at scholarly output, looking at citation impact, looking at collaboration efforts to kind of get some insight into your position within those rankings. And then also looking at your peer institutions to see, you know, those same metrics and seeing where that they're falling within those rankings to kind of help evaluate how you can adjust your position within those rankings. And that will be it. So any questions?
How many, yes. I was going to ask how many people in the audience have one of these systems at your school? Sort of?
Sort of.
Maybe one?
So that feeds into my question a little bit. So like, how, you kind of mentioned how you start, but could you talk a little bit about like how you guys took this on? Like what would be the first step for an institution that doesn't have this at all?
I think, because I've been involved in it a little bit longer than the other two, is the institution itself interested in it? Is the institution trying to collocate this kind of information and drive both internal collaboration and a culture of more grant funding and grant seeking, as well as how it presents itself to the outside world? So there's sort of the internal side, you can drive the better grant location stuff, but the outside part too is we want to put all this together and show it to the world and say this is what's going on at Syracuse or where you're from. If those questions are already being discussed, then you could start saying there are a variety of systems that might satisfy the need, but if those things aren't being discussed, then you might have to sort of make the case about what they're going to do. So it's a question of you know, it didn't start all at once. It wasn't like, oh, we just decided we're going to implement Pure, and then the week after that we had a contract signed. There was a lot of sort of very tenuous discussion going on, and we weren't quite sure if there even was a product. Just a couple of years ago, these things were completely off the radar, didn't really exist, or were mostly in the medical school community. I think that would be more accurate. So I think you would have to say, you know, start talking to Office of Research, see if they're behind it, see if Central IT, you know, I don't think it would be something for a library to run solely and completely on their own and bring to the campus and say, we've solved your problem right here and now. That might not go down as well, since it's a space that we haven't necessarily been involved in. And you're going to have to get some of the data from your partners, meaning the grant data, meaning some of the news, some of the HR stuff. Underneath this, we have the IDs, right, for all of
For the faculty.
for the faculty and everything, for the people.
Yeah,
at
so
profile.
HR data,
Yeah. So
access to.
yeah. You're not going to have all of that stuff, so it's a gradual conversation to get a couple of partners on board. That was a very long answer, but I hope it.
Actually leads into another one.
All
Sorry.
right.
Does anyone else have questions? Okay. Sorry, then I'll just ask that. How do you get faculty to recognize the importance of this, right? Because some of it's on them, a lot of it's on them to submit things. And so how do you sell it to them as yet another thing to do?
So I have done more of that at Syracuse, and you can probably speak to Michigan as well. So at Syracuse, we're still in the early phases of implementing Pure, but they do have a variety of tools, as I showed, that they can do, and lots of them do some of them. And so sort of the key that we've been using for why you would spend time on your experts at Syracuse profile as opposed to your ResearchGate profile is we also have a funding opportunities module on the back end of it, and so grant opportunities are specifically matched to faculty based on what they've put into the system. So faculty who want to get grants and want to know about grants see the value in adding more data to get better grants. We're also doing a pilot, we're trying right now to work with our college level website administrators. So we had that example of one of our researchers whose website is terribly out of date, even though she's a very, very active researcher. And we're trying to implement the Pure API across campus to drive all of those individual faculty websites to be continuously updated from experts. So it would be a place where you go, you make sure your stuff is all up to date in experts at Syracuse, and then it populates all sorts of other things for you. Long term, I think it would also be great if we could start having conversations about how to do it, how to encourage them to do it for annual CV reporting, but that's probably a little ways off at Syracuse still.
Ultimately, there has to be some sort of service that makes life easier or better for faculty, sort of appealing to the one's higher nature. Well, this is the good citizen sort of thing can only take you so far, because that's the same argument that we generally in libraries have made around repositories, and it only goes so far. People are busy, and so a lot of it is preloaded stuff, so we can go a long way, but we still need faculty to be involved and invested and active partners in it, and say, you know, we're not, no matter where we harvest from, we're not going to get all of the creative output of our researchers. We're just not. So we need their participation, and again, it's not just a sort of one-day kind of thing. You flip it and it's all done and everything. It is a process. You can get a long way pretty fast, but then you settle into ongoing discussions, and you gradually try to bring people on board and say, and show them the merits of it, and hope that those arguments are persuasive.
Yeah, I think expanding on that just a little bit, that leadership support is extremely important. So that's something that Syracuse did very well. Is the interim VPR, came out and said that this is an important tool. This is something I'm looking at, something that I'm using. And so I think that brought some recognition to it, and so people realized this is something I should be looking at too. And then SciVal, using screenshots of it in presentations, and then letting faculty know and staff know that they have access to it. So a lot of times, a misconception is, oh, these are being used to evaluate us, and it's no, it's not. It's you have access to this data too, and so just making sure that people are aware of that is extremely important.
Any other questions?
Thank you so
Thank you
much.
so much.
Yeah, we enjoyed talking.